Pitch black darkness, Abbottabad, Pakistan. A deathly silence hangs over that massive house that stands out strangely from the rest. This isn't your average villa. It has barely any windows, walls as high as a fortress topped with razor wire. The neighbors have no clue who lives inside. They don't put out trash, they burn it inside. No internet, no phone lines. It's as if the people inside have completely severed ties with the 21st century, with the modern world. But tonight, a metallic roar from the sky is about to tear that silence apart. U.S. Navy stealth helicopters, having slipped across the border under the radar, are descending upon those high walls. The target? Codenamed Geronimo, the man the world's most powerful intelligence agencies have been hunting for 10 years. The man with a multi-million-dollar bounty on his head, the subject of countless conspiracy theories. Osama bin Laden. He's not in a cave, he's on the top floor of this concrete block. The man who set the world on fire for years is actually living a prisoner's life in this gilded cage of his own making. In moments, doors will be breached, gunfire will shatter the night, and an era will end in blood just as it began. But hold on, before we step into that room, before that trigger is pulled, we need to rewind the tape, way back. This story didn't start in that gloomy room. This story began in the scorching Arabian deserts of the 1930s, with the march of a young man with nothing but a sack on his back and calloused feet. Everyone knows Osama, but very few know the figure who actually made him Osama, his father, Mohammed bin Laden. When Mohammed set out from the Hadramaut region of Yemen, he didn't have a dime to his name. He was blind in one eye, but his vision was far ahead of those with two good eyes. When he arrived in Saudi Arabia, he was a porter. He hauled bricks at construction sites, mixed mortar. But Mohammed had an incredible talent, earning the trust of the royal family. In short order, he transformed from a simple laborer into the kingdom's chief architect. He erected palaces in the middle of the desert. He took on the massive expansion projects for the holy mosques in Mecca and Medina. He amassed such wealth and power that while even Saudi kings couldn't pay salaries, Mohammed bin Laden was lending money to the state. This is the empire Osama was born into in Riyadh, 1957. Picture this. His father is the richest man in the country, but Osama is a quiet kid trying to find his place among more than 50 siblings. His mother, Hamida, was Syrian and a bit of an outsider among his other wives. Within this massive family, Osama was a child who had everything, yet was perhaps one of the loneliest. He rarely saw his father. Mohammed bin Laden was a stern, disciplined, and pious figure, flying from one construction site to another in his private jet. The father figure etched in Osama's mind wasn't a compassionate parent, but a legend watched from a distance. And then the first trauma hit. The year is 1967. Osama is just 10 years old. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, lost his life when his plane crashed while inspecting yet another site. For little Osama, this wasn't just the loss of a father, it was the lifting of the greatest authority, the biggest shadow over him. He was now the heir to a multi-million-dollar legacy. He could do whatever he wanted. He could party in Paris, cruise in luxury cars in London, build skyscrapers in New York. Many of his siblings did exactly that. They embraced the Western lifestyle, jumped into the business world, but Osama was different. He preferred riding horses to luxury cars. Instead of flashy clothes, he dressed simply, fasted, and read the Quran for hours. Walking the streets of Jeddah, he was known as a shy, tall, thin, and excessively polite young man. At the time, no one could see the spark of a fire in this quiet boy's eyes that would eventually burn the world down. His teenage years coincided with Saudi Arabia drowning in petrodollars, a time when society was rapidly modernizing but also becoming equally corrupt. Osama watched this change with disgust. When he went to university to study economics and business, his mind was occupied with entirely different questions. Why is the Muslim world so weak? Why is the West so strong? And why, despite this wealth, can we not live with dignity? Just as he was wrestling with these questions, he met charismatic teachers and fiery preachers in the campus corridors. They told Osama, You have money, you have power, but your soul is starving. Come, let us give you a true purpose." That purpose he was given would drag him first into the books and then to the snowy mountains of Afghanistan. Young Osama could have been a billionaire playboy. Instead, he chose the bloodiest path history has ever seen, becoming a Mujahid. And in 1979, with two monumental events that shook the Islamic world to its core, he would enter a road of no return. It wouldn't take long for that shy look in his eyes to be replaced by a cold, calculating stare. The lion was about to leave his den. 1979. Historians often label this year the birthday of the modern Middle East, but in truth, this wasn't so much a birth as it was an agonized scream. And for Osama bin Laden, it was the year his fate was sealed. He was just 22 years old, a fresh university graduate, a pious, quiet young man. But that year, two massive earthquakes shook the very heart of the Islamic world. First, the holiest of sites, the Kaaba, was stormed by armed fanatics claiming their leader was the Mahdi. Second, and the one that concerns us most, the Red Army, the Soviet Union, rolled its tanks across the border into Afghanistan. In Osama's mind, this invasion wasn't just a territorial dispute. This was an atheist superpower crushing a Muslim population. Suddenly, that massive fortune inherited from his father, the luxury villas, the company shares, in the blink of an eye, they all became meaningless. Osama made a decision, but that decision wasn't to grab a gun and rush to the front lines immediately, at least not yet. His first stop was the Pakistani border city of Peshawar. This place was the war's backyard, a meeting point for spies, arms dealers, and angry young men from every corner of the globe. Osama arrived here like a prince. The leaders of the Afghan Mujahideen welcomed him like royalty. Why? Because Osama was essentially a walking bank vault. He had millions in his pocket, the backing of the Saudi royal family behind him, and the massive logistical power of the bin Laden construction group at his disposal. In those early years, Osama's role was simple: the wallet. The Mujahideen respected him, sure, but they didn't see him as a soldier. They saw him as the goose laying the golden eggs. Don't fight, Sheikh Osama. You give us money, you build us roads, you set up hospitals. War is our job. And Osama did just that. He had massive bulldozers, cranes, and excavators from his family's company shipped to the rugged mountains of Afghanistan. While Soviet jets rained down bombs, he was drilling into mountains, building bunkers, carving out roads. The builder of the desert had now become the engineer of the mountains. But there was a hunger inside Osama that went unsatisfied. Signing checks and watching from the sidelines wasn't enough. He wanted to be right in the middle of the blood, the gunpowder, and the fire. This is where the first crack appeared between him and his mentor at the time, Abdullah Azzam. Azzam insisted Arabs should fight under the command of Afghans. We should be support. Osama said, no, we must form our own unit. We must fight our own war. Osama was tired of being a guest. He wanted to be the host. In 1986, he made a move that everyone called madness. Right on the edge of the Afghan border, in the Jaji region, he established a special camp made up exclusively of Arabs. He named it Ma'asadat al-Ansar, the Lion's Den. This was more than just a training camp. This was Osama's own kingdom. He was no longer just putting up his money, he was putting his life on the line. He slept in caves, ate the simplest rations, and never let his Kalashnikov leave his side. That shy, quiet billionaire was gone. In his place, a battle-hardened commander was beginning to emerge. And in 1987, history handed Osama the opportunity he was looking for on a silver platter. Soviet intelligence spotted this lion's den. Soviet commanders sent elite Spetsnaz commandos and heavy bombers to the region to crush this handful of Arab youths. Logically, this battle should have lasted a few hours.
Osama and his men should have been wiped off the map. But that's not what happened. The fighting raged for weeks. Osama, radio in hand, didn't take a single step back even as Soviet jets screamed overhead. Legend has it he was even wounded in the foot, but refused to leave the front. The young men under his command were mostly university students who had never held a gun in their lives. But seeing the son of Saudi Arabia's richest man lying in the same mud as them, that was an unbelievable motivator. In the end, the Soviets retreated. Militarily, this victory might not have changed the course of the war, but in terms of propaganda, it hit with the force of an atomic bomb. The news spread like wildfire. Saudi billionaire brings the Red Army to its knees. Osama was no longer just a wealthy donor. He was the new hero of the Islamic world. Journalists lined up to interview him. Photos began to circulate hand to hand. The camouflage jacket, the long beard, the rifle slung over his shoulder, the Afghan mountains in the background. That iconic Osama image was born right there in those mountains in those very days. In reality, the Battle of Jaji was less of a military triumph and more of a public relations masterpiece. But to Osama, it didn't matter. He had tasted blood. He had seen that even a superpower like the Soviet Union could be beaten. This intoxication of victory injected him with a dangerous confidence. If we beat the Soviets, why not aim for something bigger, something beyond? By 1989, the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan. The war was over. The Mujahideen were celebrating. But for Osama, this wasn't an end. It was just the beginning. He packed his bags, left the lion's den behind, and returned to his country, Saudi Arabia, as a hero. Kings, princes, businessmen, they all gave him standing ovations. He gave sermons in mosques. Young people raced to get his autograph. But no one knew the plans churning inside this hero's head. Osama hadn't just learned to fight in the mountains of Afghanistan. There, he had laid the foundations for a global organization. He had kept a database, a registry. He recorded the name of everyone who came, everyone who fought, everyone who trained. The Arabic name for this ledger was Al-Qaeda, meaning the base or the database. The Osama who returned to Saudi Arabia was no longer that old, quiet engineer. He now possessed the most dangerous idea in the world. Superpowers are not invincible. And now he was about to set his sights on a new target. But a twist of fate was about to pit him against his beloved homeland, the Saudi kingdom. The road from hero to traitor would prove to be much shorter than he ever imagined.
Osama had returned home, but his mind was still wandering the mountains of Afghanistan. Back in Saudi Arabia, everyone was calling him a hero, patting him on the back, but he just couldn't settle into this life of comfort. The Jihad wasn't over, it was simply changing shape. And on August 2nd, 1990, the apocalypse he was waiting for finally broke loose. Saddam Hussein, the dictator of neighboring Iraq, drove his armies south and occupied Kuwait in a matter of hours. Tanks were now idling right on the Saudi border. Panic gripped Riyadh. The royal family was terrified that Saddam wouldn't stop there, that he would cross into Saudi soil to seize the oil fields. That was the moment Osama bin Laden knocked on the palace door. He demanded an urgent meeting with King Fahd and Prince Sultan. This meeting would be the single greatest breaking point in Osama's life. Osama unrolled a map in front of the princes. That familiar, fanatical glint was in his eyes. "Do not fear," he said. "Saddam's army is an atheist army. At my command, I have thousands of Mujahideen who have chewed steel in Afghanistan, men who actively seek death. Give us permission. Let us guard the border. Do not let the Holy Lands be trampled by the boots of infidels. We will eat Saddam alive." The royal family was baffled. Standing before them was a man living in a fantasy world, completely oblivious to the realities of modern warfare. Saddam had chemical weapons, Scud missiles, and a million-man army.
Osama had nothing but Kalashnikovs. The princes offered polite smiles, but they rejected the offer. And just a few days later, Osama's worst nightmare became reality. The Saudi king invited the United States of America to defend the country. To Osama, this wasn't a military strategy, it was nothing short of treason. He cited the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, "Two religions cannot coexist in the Arabian Peninsula," and he was seething with rage. In his eyes, the lands that were the custodians of Mecca and Medina were now occupied by crusaders. American soldiers walking the streets, the presence of female troops, rumors of alcohol being consumed on bases. Osama would no longer stay silent. In mosques and private gatherings, he began openly criticizing the royal family. "You sold us out to the Americans," he shouted. For the Saudi administration, hero Osama had turned into a massive liability. First, they placed him under house arrest. They confiscated his passport. They pressured his family to silence him. But Osama was like a genie out of the bottle. There was no putting him back in. By 1991, when the pressure became unbearable, Osama bin Laden was forced to flee his own homeland. He left the lands he once roamed like a prince, departing instead like a fugitive. His new destination, the scorching heat of Africa, Sudan. Sudan was ruled by an Islamist regime at the time, and they welcomed Osama with open arms. Osama settled in the capital, Khartoum. But he didn't sit idle there either. Just like his father, he went into the construction business. He started building Sudan's largest highway project, connecting the capital to the port. He planted sunflower fields, opened tanneries. To the outside observer, he was a businessman in exile. In the mornings, he put on a tie and toured construction sites. But at night, he was building Al-Qaeda. His farmhouses in Khartoum had actually turned into terror academies. Osama was gathering jihadists from all over the world right here. And he radically shifted his strategy. The enemy was no longer the Soviets. The enemy was now what he called the far enemy, the United States. Osama's theory was simple. America is a paper tiger, just like the Soviets. If you inflict pain on them, if you kill their soldiers, they will get scared and run. They do not love death, they worship life. He didn't wait long to test this theory. The year is 1993. American soldiers are in Somalia. During an operation, their helicopters are shot down. The bodies of American soldiers are dragged through the streets. You remember those images, Black Hawk Down. The shadow behind those attacks belonged to militants trained by Osama bin Laden. And what did America do after this event? They packed up and ran from Somalia. Watching the news from his villa in Khartoum, Osama was smiling. He had been vindicated. "Did you see?" he told his men. "America is a paper tiger. It collapses after a few blows." This sent his confidence through the roof. He wasn't going to play defense anymore. He was going to attack. First, they attempted bombings at hotels housing American troops in Yemen. Then came the plans for actions against U.S. bases in Saudi Arabia. The CIA was slowly starting to fatten the file on this Saudi businessman. They realized he wasn't just a contractor building roads. The pressure mounted. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia grabbed the Sudanese government by the throat. Either you kick Osama out, or we destroy you. By 1996, the walls were closing in on Osama. Sudan could no longer resist. "You have to go," they said. But go where? Saudi Arabia had stripped his citizenship. Egypt wanted to hang him. He was a wanted man in Europe. There was only one place left on Earth he could go. The place where it all started. The capital of chaos, Afghanistan. When Osama stepped off that plane, he had his loyal men, a bit of money, and an endless supply of hatred. But this time, the situation was different. Afghanistan was no longer that romantic land of jihad against the Soviet occupation. It was a lawless hellscape, torn apart by civil war where a different warlord ruled each corner. However, this chaos was the perfect camouflage for Osama. He retreated to the mountains, he refurbished the caves, and there he began to pen the famous text that would change the fate of the world. The era of covert operations was over. It was time to openly challenge the world. In late 1996, when a document emerging from that cave hit the fax machines in Washington, no one could predict the magnitude of the approaching storm. The title of the document was this: declaration of jihad against the Americans occupying the land of the two holy mouses. The war had officially begun, and the countdown for Osama's apocalypse project was now ticking.
The year is 1996. Osama bin Laden had returned to the impenetrable mountains of Afghanistan, to Tora Bora. But this time, he wasn't just packing Kalashnikovs. He brought a typewriter, a fax machine, and a manifesto that would shake the world. The fatwa he broadcast from that cave was, in reality, a declaration of war. It read, "It is the duty of every Muslim to fight the Americans, to drive them out of the Holy Lands." When analysts in Washington read this text, they probably rolled their eyes. After all, a frail man suffering from kidney failure, living in a cave without electricity, was challenging the world's only superpower, and America armed with nuclear weapons. It was like an ant challenging an elephant. But they forgot one thing. If an ant crawls into the elephant's most sensitive spot, it can bring the beast down. Osama had to prove that his words wouldn't just remain on paper. He needed a massive action that would make noise globally and establish him as the undisputed leader in the Islamic world. "Let us strike them in such a place," he told his lieutenants, "that America will hurt, but their hands won't be able to reach us." The target was chosen: East Africa. The morning of August 7th, 1998, Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, the capital of Tanzania. Two different countries, two different cities, but when the clocks struck the same minute, the gates of hell opened simultaneously. Al-Qaeda suicide squads drove trucks laden with explosives into the American embassy buildings. The blasts were so violent that seismographs registered them as earthquakes. The American embassy in Nairobi was reduced to rubble. The building in Tanzania was heavily damaged. In total, 224 people lost their lives, and more than 4,000 were injured. Only 12 of the dead were Americans, the rest were innocent Africans. But for Osama, this collateral damage meant nothing. He had sent his message: "We are everywhere. We can hit you not just in the Middle East, but in Africa, in Asia, anywhere." America was in shock. President Bill Clinton swore revenge. Intelligence agencies scanned satellite imagery and determined that Osama would be holding a meeting at a training camp near the city of Khost in Afghanistan. Clinton pushed the button. Operation Infinite Reach began. The U.S. Navy launched 75 Tomahawks missiles from the Indian Ocean toward the Afghan mountains. These smart missiles, each worth millions of dollars, razed Osama's camp to the ground. When the dust clouds settled, the American generals thought Osama was dead. But Osama bin Laden had escaped that attack by a mere hour. He had ended the meeting early and left the camp. This failed attack didn't kill Osama, it only made him stronger. The propaganda machine kicked into gear. "Look," he told his followers, "even America's most advanced missiles cannot harm a servant protected by Allah." This event created a halo of invincibility around him, a mystical shield of protection. Osama was no longer a fugitive hiding in caves. He was like a global rock star. Radical youths from all over the world were flocking to Afghanistan to see this legendary commander. However, Osama wouldn't stop there. He had struck on land. Next was the sea. October 12, 2000, the pride of the U.S. Navy, the billion-dollar destroyer USS Cole, had docked in a Yemen harbor for refueling. The ship was so massive that no one viewed the small rubber dinghy approaching it as a threat. The two men in the dinghy waved at the soldiers on the ship, smiling. And then they rammed the boat into the ship's hull and detonated it. A massive hole was torn into the side of the giant warship. 17 American sailors died. Osama had done it again. He had struck the most advanced technology with the most primitive method. It was the terrorist version of the David and Goliath story. But all this, the embassies, the USS Cole, these were just rehearsals.
In Osama's mind, there was a plan so vast it was unimaginable, a plan we could call the apocalypse. The architect of this plan was Al-Qaeda's operational mastermind, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. KSM had come to Osama with a crazy idea. Why hijack planes to negotiate? Let's use the planes as missiles. Let's crash them into the heart of America, into its symbols. When Osama heard this idea, his eyes lit up. "Yes," he said, "that is what I want." The plan was simple, but executing it seemed impossible. They needed sleeper cells, men trained as pilots who spoke English, who could integrate into Western culture, but would never stray from their faith. And fate brought the Hamburg cell to Osama. Mohammed Atta, Egyptian and urban planner, cold, distant, and loyal to the death. When Osama looked into Atta's eyes, he saw the cold determination he was looking for. Atta and his team were sent to America. They enrolled in flight schools. They greeted their neighbors, shopped at the grocery store. No one realized they were walking time bombs. The summer of 1991 was a nightmare for American intelligence. Wiretaps and encrypted messages were constantly mentioning phrases like "the big wedding is approaching" and "something big is going to happen." The CIA director was running to the White House saying, "The system is blinking red, something is coming." But what? Where? When? No one could guess that planes would crash into buildings. Osama bin Laden had fallen into silence in Afghanistan. He was writing poetry, riding horses, and waiting for what was to come. In those final days, he moved frequently, not even telling his closest bodyguards where he was going. He never let his radio leave his side. And history arrived at the night of September 10th, 1991. In New York, people were having fun in bars, watching TV in their homes, thinking about tomorrow's business meetings. In Boston, inside a hotel room, Mohammed Atta was making his final preparations, turning his prayer rug toward the Qibla and praying. The world was about to wake up to the longest and darkest day in modern history. Osama bin Laden, deep inside a cave thousands of miles away, had already given the terrible order. The hours were ticking away, and the sun was slowly rising over America's east coast. That sun would be the last sun 3,000 people would ever see.
The morning of September 11th, the world changed forever. While firefighters were digging for bodies in the ash-covered streets of Manhattan, on the other side of the world, in Kandahar, Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden was glued to his radio. It had gone even further than he planned. The towers had fallen. America was on its knees. The disciples around him were cheering in celebration, but Osama was silent, because he knew in that moment he hadn't just woken the sleeping giant, he had driven it mad. The voice of U.S. President George W. Bush echoed over the radio. "We did not ask for this mission, but we will fulfill it." And then the sky turned black. American warplanes began pounding Afghanistan. The Taliban regime collapsed in weeks. There was nowhere left to run for Osama and his men. There was only one direction: Tora Bora. Tora Bora was a place where nature hangs a "Do Not Enter" sign for humanity. Rugged cliffs at 4,000 meters where oxygen is scarce and the snow never melts. Osama was pinned down here in December 2001. Below him were American Delta Force commandos. Above him, B-52 bombers. The mountains were trembling. U.S. intelligence was listening to his radio chatter. They could hear the exhaustion in his voice. The generals were saying, "We got him. He can't get out of this." But Osama knew those mountains like the back of his hand. He bought off local tribes with cash, left his loyal men behind as bait, and in the middle of a blizzard, slipped across the Pakistan border like a ghost. When the Americans entered the caves, all they found were empty tin cans and abandoned weapons. The bird had flown the coop. Years passed. Osama bin Laden turned into a legend, an urban myth. Some said he's dead. Others said he's in a coma from kidney failure. As America got stuck in the quagmire of the Iraq War, hunting Osama became a secondary priority. But a small team in the basement of the CIA never closed that file. Osama wasn't living in a cave. He was living in Abbottabad, Pakistan, just a few miles from the country's most prestigious military academy, in a massive villa. This place was his fortress, but also his prison. He aged behind those high walls for years. His beard turned white, but he would dye it jet black whenever he filmed a video. He spent his days watching news reports about himself in the Western media, dwelling on his past victories. While his children played in the garden, American satellites passed overhead, but no one knew they were there, because the house had no phone, no internet. They didn't even put their trash out for collection. But Osama made one mistake, just one mistake. He had to communicate with the outside world, and he did this through the only courier he trusted, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti. After years of interrogations and tracking, the CIA found the courier's trail. They followed his white SUV. The vehicle pulled into that strange, high-walled compound in Abbottabad. Satellites locked onto the house. They spotted a tall man taking walks in the garden at specific times every day. The man never looked up. The CIA gave him the code name, the Pacer. They couldn't see his face, but his height, his gait, it was him. President Obama was notified. The risk was enormous. If Osama wasn't in that house, America would be humiliated on the world stage. But Obama gave the order. It's a go. The operation's name, Neptune Spear. 2 stealth helicopters slipped into Pakistani airspace. Inside were the world's most elite unit, Navy SEAL Team 6. Their target was the ghost they had been hunting for 10 years. When the helicopters arrived over the house, things went wrong. One helicopter got caught in a vortex of air currents and crash-landed in the courtyard. The plan was compromised, but there was no stopping. The soldiers breached the walls with explosives. Gunfire shattered the silence. The lower floors were cleared. The courier was killed. Osama's son, Khalid, was shot on the stairs. The SEAL team leader moved up to the top floor, toward the bedroom. The door cracked open. Standing before him was the man he had only ever seen on television, Osama bin Laden. His youngest wife, Amal, was by his side. Did Osama try to reach for a weapon, or was he going to surrender? He never got the chance. 2 shots, one to the chest, one above the left eye. That historic announcement came over the radio. Geronimo, EKIA, enemy killed in action. The man who set the world on fire was lying on the floor of that gloomy room covered in blood. Sewn into his clothes, they found 500 euros and 2 phone numbers. He was ready to run at any moment, but this time he couldn't escape. The operation lasted only 38 minutes. They took the body, blew up the crashed helicopter, and vanished into the darkness just as they had come. Osama bin Laden's body was taken to the USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier waiting in the Arabian Sea, ensuring no land would accept him and his grave wouldn't become a shrine. He was washed according to Islamic rites, wrapped in a shroud, weighed down, and released into the dark, cold waters of the ocean. In seconds, he disappeared into the depths. Osama bin Laden was dead. In Washington, in New York, people poured into the streets to celebrate. The nightmare is over, they said. But is it? Osama actually achieved what he wanted before he died. As he sank to the bottom of the ocean, he left behind a world that had become paranoid, a world that traded its freedoms for fear of security. And worse, his Al-Qaeda fractured. But from those pieces, a far more savage, far more uncontrolled monster was born, ISIS. Osama bin Laden was born a billionaire, lived as a Mujahid, and died as a terrorist. History will remember him as the prince of the desert who was willing to burn the world for the cause he believed in.
only to choke on the smoke of the fire he started. There is no headstone at the bottom of the sea, but the waves he created are still crashing at our shores today.